Okay, Eileen. So, three refuges and five precepts. Okay.
Yes.
So
Are we
let's.
doing in Pali? Oh, it looks like. Okay, let us
Yeah.
do a formal request for taking the three refuges and five precepts. Let's chant together. Mayang Bante Tisaranena Saha Panchasila Niyachama. Dutiyampi Mayang Bante Tisaranena Saha Panchasila Niyachama. Tatiyampi Mayang Bante Tisaranena Saha Panchasilani Mayachama.
Okay, excellent. So now let us get started. And
Okay.
what happens next? Aha, yang ahang vadam etang vadeta.
Ama Bante
Excellent. So,
Namo Tassa.
Namo tassa. Okay, thank you, Eileen. So here we go. Namo tassa
Wait,
bhagavato
wait,
arahato samma
repeat
sambuddhassa.
Ajahn.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa.
Buddhang saranang gacchami.
Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Sanghang saranang gacchami.
Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Dutiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi buddhang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Buddhang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi dhammang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami.
Tatiyampi sanghang saranang gacchami.
Tatiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami.
Saranagamanang nititang.
Ama Bante.
Panatipata veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Adinadana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Adinadana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Kamesu miccācara veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Kame Sumiccācara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Musavada veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Musavada Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Sura meraya majjapamadātana veramani sikkhapadang samadhiyami.
Sura Meraya Maja Pamadatana Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami.
Imani pancha sikkhapadani silena sugating yanti, silena bhoga sampada, silena nibbutaṃ yanti, tasma silang visoda. Yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay, excellent. So, great. So what is next, Eileen, here?
Itipiso.
Itipiso. Okay, so Itipiso is next. So here we go. Itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vijacharana sampanno sugato lokavidu anuttaro Buddhisa Dhamma Sarati Sata Deva Manusana Buddho Bhagavati Svakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Epasiko Opanaiko Pachata Vedita Bovinyuhiti Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ujjapatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyaya
Patipano
Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samicipatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidang Chattari Purisa Yugani Atta Purisa Pugala Esa Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anutarang Punyaketa Lokasati. Okay, and then sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, great.
Now is a 10-minute
Guided meditation. Okay, just checking. Okay, excellent. So let's do some meditation together. It's always a good way to start the day. So, okay. More people coming in. Yeah,
More
please
people.
come in. Yeah,
Yeah.
be very friendly with each other and hang out together.
Okay, that's good.
Good. Yeah, you can come closer to me as well. I promise not to bite anyone. So please come closer. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Wow, this is nice, isn't it? Everyone kind of crammed together like sardines. This really kind of wow. Welcome to the sardine club. So please come in. More sardines are can come in here. So all right. So let's do some meditation together. So as always, just start off by closing your eyes and feeling your body, just feeling whatever you feel, just to be able to relax and enjoy and to have a good time. One of the most important things in meditation is, if anything, just to relax. And if you can just relax and be a bit less stressed by the stressful life that most modern people live, that already is a great benefit. And sometimes, if you just close your eyes and even if you just allow your mind to run all over the place, just that allowance of the mind, yeah, allowing things to be, not controlling things, not trying very hard to listen or to watch the breath or to have metta or anything, but just kind of allowing things to be. That in itself is quite pleasant because not controlling is pleasant. Controlling leads to stress in the long run. So just sit back and feel existence, feel life, and just allow things to be here. And so the first principle of meditation practice is just to allow things to be, not controlling things, not trying to do anything in particular, not to meditate. Please don't meditate, because if you meditate, it means that you will do the meditation. So just allow life to proceed, as if you are just sitting down, watching the sunset, as if you're sitting down, resting in your favorite armchair, not doing anything in particular, allowing life to flow. And as you do so, you will feel a sense of ease, hopefully, that normally you don't have. And as you allow the mind and the body to relax, remember to be kind to yourself. Everyone here is worthy of kindness. Anyone who comes to a Buddhist center, anyone who tries to live a good life, that very intention is worthy of kindness. So be kind to yourself. And when you have that gentleness and kindness towards yourself, then relaxation becomes truly possible. And And if you can have a sense of gratitude for being able to be here, a sense of how fortunate it is to have so many Kalyana Mittas who are practicing in the same way as you are. What a wonderful thing that is, and how difficult it is to find such places in the world, places of peace, places of compassion and kindness, places where we live in a good way, and we try to enhance the quality of our own life, but also the life of others. What a wonderful thing it is. Feel a sense of gratitude that you are able to be part of this. And just enjoy the fact of sitting here. Enjoy the fact of having nothing to do. All you have to do is sit on your bottom. And isn't that a wonderful thing to be able to do that and have no obligations right now in the world or anything else? And if you start to feel and understand the beauty of this kind of peace, then you start to understand what Buddhism actually is about. The stillness, the peace that comes from sitting down quietly is far superior to all the activity in the world. Try to see if you can feel that, experience that. Okay, so now coming close to the end. Before we come to the end, just ask yourself, how do you feel now? And if you feel a little bit more relaxed, a bit more at ease, a bit more mindful, a bit more kind, whatever it is, ask yourself why that is the case. And if you don't feel any improvement, again, ask yourself why also in this case. Okay, so that's the end of the meditation. So please come out and we'll start the Dhamma talk. Hmm. Okay, this is coffee with condensed milk. That's pretty good, isn't it? It's kind of the Ajahn Brahm kind of coffee. That's it's kind of interesting at Bodhinyana Monastery. Ajahn Brahm becomes sometimes every week, some lady comes and she has this whole box of condensed milk. Yeah, it's like this whole carton. And so we put that aside, and then it lasts for a certain while, and then she comes again with another carton of condensed milk. It's like this enormous thing. So this is why Ajahn Brahm gets a bit, So anyway, I think after this I'm going to go in the same direction. Okay, everyone. So very nice to see you all again, and so many familiar faces here. Wonderful to see everyone. One of the things about the Buddhist teachings, it is something that works when you persevere, something that works when you are around year after year and you come back to these things. It's a gradual thing, yeah. And I was reminded of this because you may have heard that we just came back from India. Yeah, there was a large group here came from India. Some of you didn't come. That was a mistake. And we had a really good time together in India. And it was kind of clear to me that I have been, this is my fourth time to India. And every time is better. Yeah, there's something about, well, first of all, India has changed. India used to be really rough 20 years ago. Now India is, it has highways. It makes everything much easier because it has developed so far comparatively, but also because you change. You become a different person, and you're able to enjoy the idea of being in a spiritual place to a higher level basically because your mind is different. You are a bit more pure than you were maybe 20 years ago. That's good. That's a good sign. Purification is happening here. And so this is the idea of Buddhism. And to be able to do all of this, okay, no, that's to be able to do all of this, we have to purify the mind, and we have to have, and purification of the mind really starts with the idea of right view. And usually when I come to Singapore, Eiling says, "Can you come on these and these days?" And I say, "Maybe." To check with Ajahn Brahm, first of all. Ajahn Brahm says, "Yeah, all right, okay." Ajahn Brahm wants me to stay more in Perth. Yeah, he says, "Don't travel so much." And I say, "Well, but they have invited me. What can I do?" And he says, Okay, go to Singapore." And so I come to Singapore. And then I usually ask Eiling, she asks me, "What do you want to talk about?" And I say, "Well, give me some suggestions." And then I think she puts it on social media. Is that right, Eiling? Social media? No, that's not how it works. So how do you get
Just ask
suggestions?
a few people,
Ah,
mainly Sis Hui Kim and whoever
aha.
has suggestion.
Okay, that's good. So that's a nice way actually of doing it because when you get some external input, you tend to think in new ways. If it always comes from yourself, it's the same kind of thing going around and around and around. You don't really get kind of pulled out of your comfort zone, as they say here. So it's nice to hear. So I'd like to please, when Eiling says, "I'd like to hear from you," please tell her your favorite kind of topic, even if it seems really banal. Don't be afraid of saying your favorite topic. And one of the topics this time was the topic, I don't know if you saw it, being bitten by common Dhamma concepts. And that's just a really nice idea because it's very common in the Buddhist world to misunderstand the Dhamma. And when you misunderstand the Dhamma, when you don't understand what is going on, instead of being for your benefit, it bites you. Ah, dukkha. Yeah, biting is dukkha. And so biting here stands for dukkha that comes because you don't really grasp the Dhamma in the right way. And all of that has to do with right view, seeing the world in the right way. And right view, I think, is one of the most under-communicated aspects of the Buddhist path. It is so incredibly important because right view is the driver for everything else in your practice. If you want to live a moral life, right view is the foundation for being kind. Maybe you are kind already, but this makes this even more obvious how important this is. Because being kind all the time is hard. Yeah, to have a mind of metta, of loving kindness and compassion, these are difficult. Is anyone here able to be compassionate and kind all the time? It's very hard, right? And this is because the right view is not strong enough yet. So right view is so important as a foundation for everything on the path, for a foundation of meditation. If you're meditation is a bit all over the place, it's because right view is not strong enough yet. So everything derives ultimately from right view. And so for this reason, this idea of understanding the Dhamma in the right way, contemplating it, making it something personal, something that is yours, yeah, not just something in a book, but something that actually is yours. And this was one of the nice things about going to India, because very often you read the suttas and you think, is this a story? Did this really happen? Did the Buddha really fly through the air? Actually, that's not the important point. Yeah, the important point is, did he actually did he die in Kushinara? Did he travel this way? Did Venerable Sariputta become enlightened while listening to the Buddha at the boar's cave? Did the Buddha hang out at Gijjakuta? And then you go to India and you see the landscape. You see the names of the rivers are the same as were at the time of the Buddha. Yeah, and this kind of pulls you into the Dhamma. It makes you appreciate the Buddha in an entirely new way. And it aids this thing that we call right view. Because a very important part of the right view is a feeling for the Buddha. Who was the Buddha? He was a human being who understood the human condition. That's really who he was. Very often you read the suttas and you think the Buddha is some kind of, some far away, super normal being. But ultimately the Buddha is a human being. And this is one of the things that makes Buddhism almost unique in the world, that we are dealing with a human being who showed us the way out of suffering to the highest kind of happiness. It's a human being. Most religions talk about gods and all kind of things, but Buddhism, the core thing that we focus on, is another human being who understood our condition. And this is very, very powerful. I think sometimes we don't understand how powerful that is, because when we're dealing with another human being, we can relate to that human being in a different way from what you can relate to a God. When it comes to a God, you always tend to be subservient. You just have to take the instructions. Okay, that's what God says, and whatever. Can't really argue with God. Can you argue with God? Not really. God, listen, God. Yeah, I don't believe what you said there is right. Yeah, or have you really understood this? You can't have that conversation with God. God just tells you this is the way. But when it comes to Buddhism, because we are dealing with a human being, we can have discussions. We can even argue with the Buddha. People did that in the suttas. They argue with the Buddha. They say, various things. When Sariputta says, Buddha said, do you believe me? Said Buddha, no, I don't believe you. What? You don't believe me? Well, because I know for myself, so no need to believe. So all of this has to do with these right views. So we want to we want to understand the Dhamma so profoundly that we don't get bitten by the Dhamma itself. And this idea of getting bitten by Dhamma concepts is actually taken from the suttas. The person who made up this title knows the suttas well. You know that straight away because he or she, I have a feeling who it is, but I'm not going to say, he or she obviously took a simile of the snake, which is found in the Majjhima Nikaya 22. The simile of the snake is the name of the sutta, Alagad Upama Sutta, in case your Pali is up to scratch. Like maybe, whatever. If it isn't, that's okay. Yes, I like it. And this simile of the snake is kind of one of the core things in this sutta. Very beautiful sutta, by the way. Very profound, all about non-self and these kind of issues. And it has two very famous similes in it. One is the simile of the snake, and the other one is the simile of the raft. Yeah, I'm sure you heard about the simile of the raft, yeah, for crossing over, not for holding on. And the simile of the snake is like this. If you want to catch a snake, are there any snake catchers here? No? But the snakes in Singapore, right? Yeah, we have snakes in Perth as well. So you come out, or sometimes you see snakes, but I don't try to catch them. And for some reason, the Australian snakes are really poisonous. I don't know why they are so poisonous, but they're really bad, some of the worst in the world. And so I just see them and I kind of walk different direction usually. So when you catch a snake, you don't grab it by the tail. Because if you grab it by the tail, it will turn around and it will bite your hand. And if it bites your hand, as it says in the suttas, either you die, yeah, if it's a poisonous snake, or you get death-like suffering. Yeah. It's going to be bad, in other words. So the way to catch a snake is to have like a stick with a kind of cleft on the end, yeah, and then you kind of put it over the head of this, or just behind on the neck of the snake, and then the snake can do what it wants. It can wriggle and whatever, but it can't really do anything, yeah. So you grab it by either by the neck or using a stick in that way, yeah? And in that way you don't die, which is handy, yeah. There's no need to die prematurely, so we might as well, except if you're an arahant, and usually in most assemblies, not so many arahants, so not not recommended to die prematurely here. And so this is the right way of catching a snake. And in the same way, if you grasp the Dhamma in the right way, you catch the Dhamma by the neck. Yeah, catch the Dhamma by the neck, not by the tail, then you're going to be in business. So how do we do this? And the Buddha says the way to do this is to reflect on these teachings. You read what the Buddha said. You listen to good people who teach the Dhamma in a way that aligns with the suttas. Yeah, make sure you choose your Dhamma teachers well. Don't just choose random Dhamma teachers. Choose teachers like me. Sorry, I just couldn't stop myself. I had to be stupid. So that's kind of, but my point is that choose the Dhamma teachers wisely. Yeah, it actually matters enormously. Yeah? It has to be someone who teaches in line with the suttas. So it's good to know the suttas a little bit and then check it out and see how it all comes together. Then you start to get a good understanding. Yeah? And then you reflect on these teachings. You try to understand what they mean in a deeper way. And as you reflect on them, you get that view. Yeah, this is called the right view. You start to see what is going on. You start to see the world in the same way that the Buddha saw the world. That is what we are trying. The Buddha gives us the most important gift that one person can give another in this world, and that is the right view, seeing things in the right way. Nothing is more important, because when you see things in the right way, you can make good decisions. If you see things badly, you can't make good decisions. So we are kind of lost without the Buddha. So the Buddha says, here is the most important gift one human being can give to another. I give it to you, and most people, what do? They reject it. It's like someone gives you a nice cup of coffee and you reject it. Yeah, that's kind of, that actually this is... Actually, these days I get so much coffee that I have to reject it sometimes. For breakfast, 4 cups of coffee lined up for breakfast. It's very nice. I actually feels very good when people are looking after you. It's even better to look after others, but it's also nice when people look after you. So actually, it's very beautiful in a way. But sometimes it gets too much. So this is what we need to do, yeah, to avoid kind of being bitten by Dhamma concepts. So understand, yeah, investigate, think about things, reflect on them. What do they actually mean? How do they apply to my life? How do I use this when I walk, go to work or in my family life, or I travel to India, or I come to the BF? How do I apply these principles in my life? What do they actually mean? How do I look upon my fellow BF members? Do I get irritated with them when they do stupid things, or do I have compassion for them? Yeah, and it's kind of obvious after a while. How do you have compassion? How do you need to reflect to make compassion possible? Because it's easy to say, have compassion, but it's not so easy to always do it. Yeah. You say, oh, be compassionate. Oh, don't be compassionate. That's not the right way of being compassionate. Yeah. Too much force. And so, what are then some of these common Dhamma concepts that we get wrong? So I'm going to talk about a few of these. And, one of the other suggestions for the talk today was why practice when there is no self and the defilements are empty. Yeah, that's obviously wrong view. Yeah, so that's one of the things we're going to talk about. So getting that wrong is problematic. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to start with the idea of kamma or karma and some of the misunderstandings about karma, because this can go really wrong when we think about it wrongly. And I'm sometimes surprised at how many Buddhists don't understand kamma properly, and they really haven't, think about it in a way that actually makes them become stupid in the world. And one of these things that it is really problematic is the idea that people in the world are responsible, yeah, for their bad state. You go to India, and when you go to India like we did, people are so poor. Yeah, and then people are, no, this is their own karma. Yeah, they were stupid in the past. Okay, go away from me because you were stupid in the past. I don't want to have anything to do with fools. Yeah, and you push them to one side. And people often think like this, and then they make themselves cold towards people who are obviously suffering in a very deep way. You build up a cold heart because you say you were stupid and bad in the past, and now you're just experiencing the results of that. That is the wrong way to think. Yeah, and maybe they did some mistakes in the past, but you have also made mistakes in the past. I have made mistakes in the past. Everyone has made mistakes in the past. And why we are born in Singapore, or in my case in Norway, and now living in Australia, or you're born as a poor person in India, it's a bit random. It depends on what karma ripens, it depends on circumstances and who you are attached to, all of these kind of things. Don't think that you are superior. I shouldn't think that I'm superior just because born in a good family, or because I'm a Buddhist monk or whatever. That's the wrong way to think about things. Everything is just fluctuations. We fluctuate around things, going up, going down. Nothing is really certain. And if we think about these things in the wrong way, we become very stupid, and we lose our ability to be compassionate and kind to people in the world. So please don't think about these things in such ways. It is the wrong way to think. And when I was in India and I saw all of these poor people, we were in some of the poorest part of India, Bihar. Yeah, you have been Bihar, right? And then Uttar Pradesh, which is the other kind of main state. Very, very poor parts of India. And when you are there, you see a lots of people who are really in a very bad way because of that. And it actually is a great opportunity to have compassion, yeah, when you see all of these people. And it's actually very hard not to be touched by it because the poverty is so extreme. Yeah, people who are completely destitute, just living on the streets, and often they have kind of deformed legs and limbs, and it's just kind of really, really awful to see that. And so allow that to open your heart instead of allowing you to close down and not having compassion for these people. This is one of those remarkable possibilities of doing that. I was saying to people yesterday, I was giving a bit of talk about the India trip yesterday, and it was almost, when you were there, it was almost this feeling that you belong to different realms. Here we came from a wealthy country in a large bus. It was a feeling almost like you were in the 𝐷EV𝒂𝒂𝒂 compared to these people who were kind of sitting on the ground begging from you. Yeah, this is kind of almost a feeling. This feeling is a massive difference in conditions between them. But you know, and there is some truth to that. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a fundamental difference between you just because of that. So it's an opportunity to see suffering in the world. And of course, when it comes to reality, when it comes to suffering, we are all have that suffering to some extent. It is not just the poor people in India. And in our societies, in the wealthy societies of the world, the suffering is often more hidden. It is often in the mind instead. Our minds are not much more elevated than the minds of those poor people in India, because it is because of your mental conditions that you get reborn as a human being. And so the mind is largely in the same place. And so remember that when you look out at the people around you, when you look out at everyone here today, everyone here is suffering. Everyone here has plenty of problems in their lives they would like to sort out. I have plenty of problems. Yeah. Everyone has, Ajahn Brahm has plenty of problems. The Buddha even had problems, right? Of course, the Buddha had overcome most of it. Ajahn Brahm doesn't have so many. I have more than Ajahn Brahm. And you know, so there is like, but everyone has lots of problems. And remember that. So when you look out at your fellow BF members, remember to see that in them. See the suffering behind the facade. One of the dangers, often we put up a facade as being very successful or being very happy or being very kind of whatever. And everyone thinks, wow, they really have their act together. Yeah, these are kind of, actually, probably they don't. The facade is there behind the facade. Take off the mask. And behind the mask actually is a vulnerable human being who is prone to the same kind of suffering, the same kind of mental anguish and problems as every one of us. Remember that. Yeah, look at your people, everyone around you. Remember the suffering behind the facade. Because if you don't remember that, you're going to treat them far more harshly than they deserve. But the reality is far more mundane, far more ordinary. So, yeah, and then you can start to have compassion for everyone. If someone treats you badly, if someone says something bad, why do they do that? Probably because they are suffering. That's probably the reason. No one really does anything bad if they are happy. If you're happy, yay, let me give you a hug, yeah, or a pat on the back or whatever, or a cup of coffee at least. That's kind of me, a cup of coffee here. Yeah, and so you when you're happy, you don't really do anything bad. So whenever someone does something stupid, almost guaranteed that they're suffering here. So when someone does something bad, don't react back. This person is suffering here. Actually, okay, it's okay. Give you a pat on the back. All right, you know, let me look after you. Yeah, I can see you are suffering today. You know, when your boss at work yells at you, okay, boss, yeah, it's okay. Yeah, let me get you a cup of coffee. I don't know if that's possible, but if that is done, yeah. But these are the kind of the ways of thinking about people around you, and straight away it turns your mind around. You look at people in a different way. So remember the suffering. Remember that people are victims in the world. It's such an important point. Everyone really is a victim. We tend to divide the world up into perpetrators and victims. These are the bad guys, these are the good guys, these are the violators, these are the victims. But it's not as simple as that. The reality is that everyone is a victim. What are we a victim of? We are a victim of our conditioning. We are a victim of our personality. Where does your personality come from? Yeah, it kind of, you get born with that personality. This is the past, the accumulated past, which kind of builds you up into who you are. We are the victim of our past lives. We are the victim of our parents. We are the victim of our school. We're the victims of the weather. We're the victims of whatever else is happening in the world. Every one of us is a victim. We can't do anything about these things. We have come into this world in this way, and this is the way things are. So remember that. Yeah, no one can step out of their personality and say, I will be a different person. And when you understand that everyone is a victim and everyone is suffering, then you can have compassion for everyone around you. It is such an important thing, and it really changes your life and the way to look at things. So instead of judging people saying, yeah, they did bad karma in the past, that's, their problem, have instead this kind of compassion for everyone. But that is not enough. This is the bad news. It's not enough. You have to do more. You can see how demanding this path is, yeah? First of all, compassion for everyone. But actually, if you have too much compassion, can also be dangerous. It looks like I'm trying to eat this microphone all the time, but I... Too much compassion can also be a problem because sometimes compassion, seeing the suffering, can sometimes let you down and you feel a bit negative. But in a Buddhist fellowship like this, also a lot of kindness. Yeah, people are actually very good. It was so nice to be on this pilgrimage to India, and everyone was really nice and caring and looking out for each other. We had a really good time together. I didn't see the slightest flare of temper in 18 days with 70 people. And that's kind of extraordinary. No one was too demanding. No one was irritable. There was just kind of this really positive vibe all the way through, yeah? That is rare in the human realm to see that. So it was really nice. And so here as well at the BF, so many good people. See the goodness in the people around you. Be amazed by the fact that even though we live in this human condition, which is so difficult, still people have good qualities. Still they are kind, still they do the right thing, still they are caring, still they are compassionate. That is what is really remarkable. So rejoice in that when you see the goodness in the people around you. Don't just, yes, have compassion for people, but also rejoice in the good things. And think, wow, how are you able to be so kind when considering life is so difficult? Teach me, yeah, how do I do it? And then you get this beautiful balance, seeing the kindness when it's there. But when the kindness is not there, then you have compassion. And these two pillars are pillars of right view in Buddhism. This is understanding what human beings are. We are these non-self entities that are conditioned by the past. And that conditioning from the past, the consequences of that is this kind of compassion and metta coming together. This is what it means. So this is the misunderstanding of kamma. Don't take kamma in the wrong way. Yes, we are in large part what we are because of kamma, but we're not really in control of that kamma. That kamma happens because of cause and conditions itself. So this is thinking about kamma in the right way. So now let me move on to the next thing. Yeah, and if you have any questions about this, and many, many more things about kamma. Kamma is a very kind of complex field, and there's many kind of misunderstandings about it that usually need to be sorted out. But that at least that's one very important point right there. Now, the second one that this person asked about in the questions was, well, if defilements are empty, why should we practice? If defilements are empty, well, what does it mean anyway? Defilements are empty. Yeah, actually, the Buddha never says defilements are empty. Yes, this is kind of this person made it up. So don't know why they made that. Maybe it's found in some other sutta, but certainly not in the early Buddhist text. There's nothing there about the defilements are empty. So defilements are just defilements. Yeah, are they really empty? No, not well. When they're there, they're not empty. When they're not there, then they are gone. That's a better way of thinking about it. So what does this emptiness idea mean anyway? What does it even mean? When you say defilements are empty on the surface, it sounds, well, in that case, it's no big issue. Yeah, but sounds like they don't exist, kind of, yeah, if they're empty. But that is the wrong way of thinking about things. That is not what emptiness means in Buddhism, certainly not in early Buddhism. Emptiness in early Buddhism, sunyata, is a synonym for non-self. Emptiness just means that these things are not lasting, they're not inherent, they're not always there, yeah? That's what it really means. And so if something is empty, it just means that it is not something that kind of is a pillar or a mountain peak that is solid and always remains. That is all it really means. But it does not mean that it doesn't have any effect. It means it can still arise and disappear. Yeah, and then as long as it keeps on arising, well, it is still equally problematic, right? So emptiness needs to be understood in the right way. things come, they exist in a different kind of way. They don't exist in a solid way as always present, but they exist temporarily. And that existence is equally problematic for us because they come, and when they're there, well, yes, they are really problematic. Yeah, if you get really upset and angry about something, it's really problematic. You become blind, you become stupid when you get really angry about something. Or if you have very strong desires for something, you also become very stupid. You get biased by these defilements that we have. And so, yes, they are fundamentally problematic. It doesn't matter if they are empty in the non-self sense. What matters is that they tend to destroy your life and cause you enormous amounts of suffering in the long run. That is what matters, and that is what you should be worried about. So yes, you should practice to overcome these defilements because they are problematic, and whether they are empty in a kind of philosophical sense, that is not really the point. You can see here what is happening here. What is happening here is that we tend to abstract the Dhamma. We make it into something abstract. Yeah, we say, okay, defilements are empty. We make some abstract notion that doesn't really have any bearing on reality. We're kind of moving away from our lived experience. What matters is your lived experience. What matters is what your life is like, what you feel, and just abstracting things out into ideas, into something in your head, is actually going to take you away from that lived experience. And that's where we get these ideas like defilements are empty, so therefore no need to practice. Yeah, that's where they come from. They come from this abstraction. But if you know the nature of your defilements just through experience, well, you know how problematic they are. That's really all you need to know. That abstraction can often destroy kind of our sense of what really matters. That's why we have to be careful being too scholastic, because if you're very scholastic, you tend to abstract the Dhamma, and then it doesn't really have any direct bearing on your life anymore. Yesterday, we were discussing the various holy places in India. And one of the places that we went to when we were there was Nalanda University. That was one of the great universities in the world. Yeah. Wow, this university had the two big libraries in the world at that time. Was the Library of Alexandria. This is in ancient Egypt. It was part of Greece at that time. Was very, very famous. And the other one was the one in Nalanda. These were like the two main libraries in the world. And the one in Nalanda was 7 stories tall, I think. Was it 7? I can't remember now. I was was it 7 along? Yeah, that's what 7. Okay. So I get confused. 9, 7, 11. There's so many numbers in there. So 7 stories tall and this enormous place. And there was kind of, it sounded really awesome. Now, what the two libraries had in common, Alexandria and Nalanda, was that they both burned down and everything was destroyed. That was kind of what they had in common. Anicca, yeah? But the interesting thing to me, yeah, it's like everyone goes and think, wow, this is kind of the epitome of the most kind of remarkable educational institution that Buddhism has ever seen in 2,500 years. And you see these ruins and you see the walls like they were between 5 and 15 feet thick, the walls. 5 was like the thin wall. 5 foot thick, so like 1.5 meters, that's the thin wall, and the thick walls were 15 feet. Yeah, what about that? That's 5 meters or 4.5 meters or something. Enormous walls that they had. And so we go and marvel, yeah, and people say, wow. And then they had these teachers. There was 1,500 teachers and 10,000 students or something. This was where Xuanzang, the famous monk from China who came all the way from Xi'an in China and traveled all the way, the famous journeys to the West and all of that. And he went there and he stayed there for a couple of years under this kind of marvelous kind of teacher who knew everything about everything. And we think this is so wonderful. But is it wonderful? This is kind of interesting, yeah? When the whole world says this is wonderful, then you have grounds for being suspicious because the whole world usually gets things wrong. Yeah. What the majority thinks is right very often actually is right. And so I think the exact opposite, actually. I think Nalanda probably was more like the decline of Buddhism. It seems like this extraordinary place, but you go into scholasticism. You abstract out the ideas into some abstract realm that no longer relates to you. And once you make them abstract, they don't relate to your lived experience, you keep on abstracting forever, because that realm is this realm of intellectual curiosity and intellectual ideas that just goes on and on and on. And there is no solution in the realm of abstraction. The solution is always found in the realm of experience. So we use abstractions a little bit because we have no choice. When we communicate with each other, when we talk about the Dhamma, we talk about dependent origination or whatever, we have to abstract a little bit because that's how we communicate. But then we bring it back to our lived experience. And at that moment, you see the emptiness, not of defilements, but you see the emptiness of the question, defilements are empty here. Why should I practice? That question is empty here. Yeah, that question is actually wrong. It is kind of going in the wrong direction. So really sorry for who asked that question, but the question is a bit empty. I apologize. This is not some kind of, I'm not telling you off or anything. So please ask empty questions because we will sort them out anyway. Okay, time for a bit of coffee. So that is the non-emptiness of defilements. They just exist in a different way. They are empty in one sense, but they're not empty in another sense. And now I want to talk about the last one, which was the idea of non-self. If there is no self, why practice? And I think there is something there which is interesting, right? There is an intuition there that something is kind of strange if there is no self. That intuition is interesting. So why do people even think like this? Yeah, if there's no self. I think one of the reasons is, well, because if there is no self, then do I really have any agency? Do I have any ability to do anything about this? If I don't really exist, what can I do anyway? I'm kind of that means I'm a victim rather than actually being able to do anything. So that is, I think, part of this intuition, right? I don't have any agency in the world. That's one thing. Another thing is, well, if there is no self, then is there any real meaning? Is there any real purpose if there is no self? What is all of this really about anyway, if there is no self? Kind of taking the self out of it seems to mean kind of everything becomes kind of pointless. Yeah, and weird in a sense. So then, maybe there's no point to the practice. Just kind of allow things to go or whatever. Yeah, because there's no purpose, there's no agency anyway. So the whole thing kind of collapses in a big heap. And in a sense, that is very close to the Buddha's ideas. It is not that far away from the way the Buddha thinks. If you ask the Buddha, is there any real purpose to life? Well, he will say the only purpose is really to get enlightened. That's the only purpose. Everything else is a waste of time. Yeah. So hopefully all of you are taking that spiritual path really seriously, because that is what matters in our life. So that is the intuition that people have. But there is a problem with that intuition. And the problem is, of course, that we actually suffer. Yeah, and because there is suffering, and we all know that there is suffering, there is obviously a problem to be solved. And because there is a problem to be solved, then, well, we better get on with it, because, suffering certainly is real. This is again about coming back, not allowing things to be too abstracted, but coming back to our lived experience. So we suffer. We want to do something with that. That's number one. And number two is that even though there may not be a self in the higher sense, it certainly feels like there is a self, right? It feels like we are here. And that is a very big part of the problem. The sense of self, what creates so many problems for us. So even if there may not be a self, we don't really know that. And as long as you don't know it, as long as you have the sense of self, well, you have a problem, because you act as if there is a self. And then you destroy your life and destroy your future and everything because you act accordingly. Yeah, so that is the problem. So this is why we need to kind of we cannot sort of deal with this in that way by simply saying that there is no self, and so for that reason there is no practice. So the point here then is that instead of thinking that okay, I can just kind of go back and lie down on my bed and stare at the ceiling, there's nothing to be done. Remember that when you do that, you're just making another choice. You are making a choice that will have consequences in the future. Part of the point here of this whole path that yes, you may not have any agency in the terms of a real self acting in the world, but there is agency, and that agency has consequences. That is the point. So agency always has consequences. So what you do matters enormously. This is why the Buddhist path works, right? But it's not really coming from you. It is coming from causes and conditions around you. It's the Dhamma that is doing the acting, and you are just kind of the vehicle, if you like, through which the Dhamma acts in a sense. And so the idea here is that, there is something to be done because there is suffering. Come back to the lived experience. Don't abstract it too much. And I will give you an example of how this works because one of these, I spoke about this a little bit on the pilgrimage as well. One of these beautiful words in Buddhism that you find when you talk about the Dhamma, we just chanted it before, 𝑠vakato bhagavata Dhammo sanditthiko akaliko ehipasiko o panaiko pachatang veditabo vinyuhiti. This is the Dhamma according to the Buddha. This is how we should reflect on the Dhamma. And all of these words are very interesting. And I would really recommend you to reflect on these words, what they actually mean. Look at different translations of these words. Try to understand what they are referring to. So most of these words, I think, are fairly kind of not straightforward exactly, but they can be understood. But one of the words that I always had a little bit of problems with was the word opanayika. What does opanayika mean? And it is translated in different ways. 𝐵𝒂𝒄𝒕𝒔 translated as applicable. So that means that Dhamma is applicable. Opanayika Dhamma. Dhamma is applicable. Okay, applicable. Yeah, sure. Okay, you apply it. Right. Okay, fair enough. Another one translated, this is my friend Venerable Sujato. He says it's relevant. Yes, it's relevant. Of course, it's relevant. You've got the Dhamma. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing this. Another translation which has been used before is leads onwards. That is actually, to me, more close to the root meaning of Apanayika. That's actually getting very close. The word means it's a compound, or it's not a compound, it is a root with a prefix. And the root is Upanaya is Nayati or Naya, which means to lead. In Sri Lanka, you have the Mahanayakas, the great leaders of the Sangha. So Nayaka means to lead, and Uppa means like onwards or towards. So the word means something like leading to. Leading in a certain direction, leading towards. That is what it means. Leading towards what? Well, obviously leading towards reduction in suffering, leading towards more happiness, leading to samadhi, leading to awakening eventually, leading to all those things that the Buddha is talking about. So this is what this word means. The Dhamma leads you in the right direction. The Dhamma leads you towards all the good things in the world. That's the point of the Dhamma. That's why the Buddha taught it, out of compassion for the world. So what does that mean in terms of non-self? What it means is that it is the Dhamma that takes you towards the goal, not you. You don't have any ability to take yourself to the goal because that's why you are still here. This is why you've been messing around in samsara for all of this time. This is why I'm still here as well, because we've been messing around. We haven't really got our act together. This is the problem, because we have tried to make the Dhamma, to do the Dhamma. But we can't do that because the sense of self is blind. It is stupid. It is silly. It doesn't really know what is going on. It is the Buddha who knows what is going on. And so the idea of Upanayika is to allow the Dhamma to do the work, not you. You can't take responsibility for moving forward. The Dhamma is what is responsible for that. And so the ideal way of practicing the path, yeah, is to actually don't do it. Don't try to take credit for it. Don't say, yeah, I'm going to practice the path. No, that is already the wrong way. Allow the Dhamma to express itself through you. The Dhamma becomes the driver in your life. That is what actually leads you onward. If you try to make the path work, I'm gonna be kind, yeah, whatever, and you put too much self into it, too much ego into it, you will not really be able to sustain it. Yeah, because it takes all this willpower. It takes the sense of self kind of driving the path onwards. Even worse, your defilements drive the path, yeah, because you have some kind of desire to have some sort of happiness or whatever, or maybe coming from some degree of sensuality or whatever. That drives you onwards. And that's even worse because the sensuality is obviously a defilement which biases you and actually often takes you in the wrong direction. So, if there is no self, it doesn't mean that we shouldn't practice. It just means that we should try to allow the Dhamma to do the practice for us rather than allowing the Dhamma to be driven by this false sense of self. It is false anyway, so how can this false sense of self do anything useful when it's just kind of a mirage and it doesn't really work? And so we allow the Dhamma to express itself through us. So you are kind, not because, yeah, I'm a good person, yeah, my ego says I must be good. You're not kind for that reason, but you are kind because the Dhamma is so strong inside of you that kindness just comes out of you. That is the ideal way. And then the path becomes really easy. Yeah, because you are just expressing what the Dhamma says in the world. You are kind because you know kindness is right. You're compassionate because you understand compassion is important in the world. Yeah, you are moving towards stillness because you know all the sensuality, just more agitation, more restlessness endlessly. Okay, you still enjoy the sensual pleasures in the world, but you don't attach so much to them as you otherwise would. That is the right way of thinking about this. So how can you make the Dhamma express itself through you? How do we do that? This is kind of the hard question, right? Okay, it's easy to say. So how do we do that? And the way to do that is to understand the Dhamma as deeply as you possibly can. How it relates to your life. Yeah, what to understand the right view of the Buddha and then make that right view of the Buddha your right view by gradually changing your mind and aligning your mind with the right view of the Buddha. It takes time, it takes reflection, it takes contemplation to do this. This to me is one of those underestimated aspects of the Buddhist path, the idea of reflecting and trying to see the way the Buddha saw the world. And as you do that, gradually you align up with the Buddha in the right way. Then, when that right view becomes solid inside of you, or reasonably solid anyway, then the Dhamma starts to express itself naturally. Yeah? So, gradually building up. So, in the meantime, what do we do? Because in the meantime, there is going to be a sense of self. In the meantime, there are going to be defilements that tell you do this, don't do that. So how do we do this as a practical thing? And one of the ways of doing this is to stop sometimes. Don't move too fast. If you are going to make a decision, if you are going to speak to somebody, if you're going to act, even if you're going to think about something, wait a little bit. Ask yourself, where am I coming from? Is this coming from the sense of self? Is it coming from the Dhamma? And sometimes just by closing your eyes and kind of allowing this kind of idea to mature a little bit, you can a mindfulness to arise. You can actually feel what is the Dhamma and what actually is the sense of self, the ego, etc. So a little bit of mindfulness, a little bit of stopping, not talking too fast, not acting too fast, is actually very, very useful already to allow the Dhamma to express itself through you. So this is kind of the idea. And then as your right view becomes more and more purified, the more the Dhamma just comes out by itself, and there's less that you have to do. In the meantime, we have to be realistic. And part of the realism is to understand that sometimes the self will express itself. Sometimes the self is going to say, yeah, okay, I will do this. Sometimes the defilements will express themselves. And it's okay. Yeah, it's not, don't blame yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. I know some people tend to be very hard on themselves. Please don't be hard on yourself. Have compassion for yourself. Just like everyone else in the world, you are conditioned. You too are a victim. So be passionate. You will fail at this game. This is a very, very difficult game. This is one of the hardest things that any human being can do. Overcoming the sense of self and allowing the Dhamma to express itself naturally. The only people who do this fully are the arahants, for goodness sake, the fully enlightened people. So if you're not fully enlightened, you're going to make mistakes. And, you know, as I said before, the fully enlightened ones are few and far between in the world. Yeah, so don't be upset with yourself. So you just try. And if the self gets in the way, if the defilements get in the way, that is okay. Yeah, and then you kind of come back again later on to allowing the Dhamma to work properly. So these are some of the problems in the world. Yeah, the sense of the fact that there is no self does not mean you shouldn't practice. You should still practice, but you should practice in accordance with the Dhamma. You should allow the Dhamma to take charge rather than the sense of self to take charge. And as you live in this way, gradually this whole thing starts to unravel. It starts to work by itself in a certain way. And that is the beautiful thing about this. So remember, coming back to where we started, the simile of the snake, the way to know what the Dhamma is, and this is how that simile is expressed in the suttas, is to come back, understand what the Buddha really was talking about, reflecting on his message, trying to grasp what actually all of this is about. And as you grasp it, your view gradually falls into alignment with the Dhamma itself, and then it becomes very, very powerful and beautiful. So this is how to avoid being bitten by some of these common Dhamma concepts. So good luck to you. That is the talk for today. Everyone. So there you are. So now you have the chance to ask me really, really hard questions or really easy questions. It's up to you. Either way, wise questions or stupid questions. The best questions are usually the stupid ones. Why? Because you think they are stupid, but actually they're not so stupid after all. So please feel free to ask anything you like.
Anyone want to be the first one to start off?
Ivan is always reliable. Okay. Very good.
Thanks. Ajahn, thank you. That was really profound. I'm so used to thinking, I hope this is not going to be an empty question. Right? I'm so used to thinking of Dharma as teaching. Yeah. But in your presentation today, you talk about Dharma as if it's an agentive force that takes expression.
Yeah.
In this context, how do I understand Dhamma? What is Dhamma?
Okay, good. Yeah. So remember, Dhamma is actually what the Buddha realized on his night of awakening. Yeah, that's really the Dhamma. And then one of the really difficult things that the Buddha had to do was somehow to articulate that experience. Yeah, and that becomes then the teaching, but it arises out of personal experience. It arises out of what he understood on the night of awakening. And one of the most awesome, amazing, remarkable things is the Buddha's ability to express something so profound as an awakening experience through words in a way that he could pass on to the next generation so they too can understand the same thing. That is kind of the amazing thing here. So Dhamma ultimately is about experience. And the more your conduct is aligned with that experience that the Buddha had, the more it is that same experience, and the more it is in line with the Dhamma, and to that extent, it is the Dhamma itself. And so you just look inside of you and you ask yourself, is this aligned with the way the Buddha teaches and maybe the Buddha's experience? You will have some experience yourself. You will know at times you have been more peaceful, you have been closer to the things the Buddha talk about. And so then you are, to some degree, in tune with that Dhamma, ultimately coming back to experience. So experience and teaching here are really just two sides of the same coin. Yeah. Okay. Yes, please.
Actually, you mentioned about let Dharma work through itself,
Yeah.
So meaning to say we need to be patient, let it flow naturally. I'm trying to actually, I'm someone who's very practical. Always I talk about how to.
Yeah.
Really how to step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4.
Yeah.
So how to make
So
the
how to,
Dharma
flow through you.
Flow through, yeah. So something I can really relate to, I can.
Okay, sure, good. No, thank you for asking very practical questions. That's really, really nice, actually. And so the way that this works, remember that when you read the word of the Buddha, basically what you're getting is right view. The Buddha is telling you this is the way the world works. And if you read it and you think, yeah, the Buddha has a point, yeah? The Buddha says, if you are kind, you feel good about yourself. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah, if you are kind, you do feel good about yourself. I mean, at least that's what I do, and I assume everyone else is pretty much the same. And that moment, you become more kind automatically because you know the truth of what the Buddha said. That changes your habits. It changes your outlook. It changes the way you live in the world. And the more powerful that understanding is, that happiness comes from good conduct, the more powerful your good conduct is going to be. So you understand the word of the Buddha, you reflect on it, and as you reflect on it, it becomes your personal knowledge. Then the Dhamma starts to work through you. So this is why I'm saying that reading the suttas, understanding the word of the Buddha, means you internalize these teachings. They become basically part of your psychological makeup, if you like. And then the Dhamma starts to express through you. So this is the first part, understanding the Dhamma. The second part is to, as I mentioned before, don't act too quickly, because very often when we act too fast, it's just the defilements expressing themselves or the ego coming out. So stop a little bit, wait, okay, why am I doing this? Yeah, and as you gain that mindfulness, it becomes more easy for the Dhamma to express itself through you because you're stopping a little bit. You're going a little bit more slowly. You know that the first word that comes into your mind may not necessarily be the right word, depending on where you're coming from. So these two things, understanding the teachings, reflecting on them, and secondly, being a bit more slow in how we react, so as to allow that Dhamma to arise in our minds instead of all this other stuff that sometimes takes over.
Yeah, Ajahn, because we learned that we are the owner of our karma.
Yeah.
We are the heir of our karma and so on. Somehow it's giving me the impression that I have to be accountable. I have to take responsibility. So it kind of doesn't go.
Okay,
like
sure.
saying,
Yeah, okay. I know what you mean. That is it's a big problem because once we use the word responsible, then it sounds like, I have to do it. I am responsible, and I am at fault if I go wrong. Yeah, so it's my fault or whatever. But there is no word equivalent to responsible in Pali. There is no such word. Yeah, so the idea of responsibility is something we add to the situation. Yeah, so. The Pali, what it says merely, it says that actions have consequences. Actions have consequences, yeah? It doesn't say whether you're responsible, it just says that actions have consequences. So this is part of the idea of understanding the word of the Buddha. So when you understand the word of the Buddha and he says actions have consequences, you start to think more carefully about your actions because you know they have consequences. That's the point of right view. It is not about whether you are ultimately responsible or ultimately not responsible, because there is no self. So how can you possibly be responsible? All there is cause and conditions working. But because you understand the causality, you start to change your attitude and the way you live because of your understanding of the nature. And this is why right view is so incredibly important, right? You can see how fundamental it is. Because we are creatures of conditionality, because we are what we are, because of habits of the past, that right view is just so important. Without that right view, we just keep on going on and on and on in the same old way without getting out of it. Yeah? So responsibility needs to be used very carefully, that word, because that word does not really apply quite in the way in Buddhism as it does in other areas of life where you are held responsible. And if you say to your boss, no, it's just conditionality, yeah, the boss is not going to be too happy with you. Yeah? That's kind of part of the problem. Then come to this idea of being the heir of your karma and the owner of your karma. And yes, you are the heir, yeah, so you have to get the results. Owner of your karma, well, the idea here is just to kind of make the distinction that the vast majority of things in the world we certainly don't own. Yeah, when you're going to die, everything has to go. All you have left really is the mind, and the mind is the carrier of karma, and that's why karma follows along with the mind. Yeah, so the karma goes along with that. But in the end, even that is not quite true. It just means that you are more owner of your karma than you are owner of anything else in your life. Everything else has to go. Karma will last a lot longer. But ultimately, you're not even the owner of your karma, because karma also eventually exhausts itself and eventually it is gone. It is just a relative thing, yeah? So we have to, again, understand even that in the right kind of perspective. And so, yeah, so even that has its own limits. Okay.
Ajahn,
Andrew.
just maybe a comment
Yeah.
and part of a question. So I think that perhaps the person who asked the question about defilements being empty maybe has read Mahayana Sutras.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the Heart Sutra, the famous Heart Sutra, says that everything is empty, basically.
Right.
So there's a famous part which says there is no defilements, there's no purification, there's no path to purification. So all are empty.
Yeah.
So, my question then is, I mean, the Mahayana Sutras are quite interesting in themselves, but perhaps is it maybe not so wise to read them outside of the early Buddhist texts?
Well, that is a good question, and what this Heart Sutra says is that the path is empty and defilements empty. It is not wrong, but you have to understand it in the right way. Yeah? That's kind of the thing. Yeah? And very often you will grasp these ideas in the wrong way, and that's kind of, again, we're getting the tail of the snake. Yeah? And so you have to understand them in light of the early sutras, the early texts, and then you can kind of understand them correctly. Yeah? But I would say to most people, stick with the early sutras, stick with the early Buddhist texts. There's plenty enough to read. And when you finally get through the long discourses, the middle-length discourses, the connected discourses, the numerical discourses, you can go back to the long discourses again, right? Because we've forgotten what they were about when you get to the end. There's plenty enough to read there. There's no need really to go to the Mahayana Sutras. And I am not saying that all the Mahayana Sutras are rubbish. I would never say that. There's always a lot of wisdom there. These are also wise people. But they need to be understood in a certain context. And unless you are very strong, have a very strong and firm understanding of that context, you are very easy to misunderstand them. So yes, so defilements are empty in the sense that they are not inherent. They don't stand there all the time. In that sense, they are empty, but they are not empty in the sense that they are meaningless. They have meaning and they need to be overcome. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhante.
Hello.
Ajahn, you mentioned about the Upanyanid or describing what the qualities of the Dhamma, and you said you felt that the translation of leading towards.
Yeah, Opanayika. Yeah.
And kind of like I like the way you explained it, how to look at it, why that would be more applicable, because it does make you also think that, oh yeah, so that means there is actually no self, it's actually the Dhamma that actually leads you to enlightenment. You have to use yourself. So okay, that's interesting, that's good. But when I'm studying about not studying, been analyzing about anatta, I tend to think that, is it because our concept of the word self, because we think of self as something permanent. But if we were to think of self as something that is changing, would that be, then it would be all right. But of course, that also doesn't mean that we stick to it then. That's just because what's a self is just a definition, and it should happen that we tend to define it as something permanent. That's why it causes all this problem, isn't it? So
it's that the thing is that it's not really a definition, it is an experience. And so if we go with definitions, again, we are abstracting things and we're not really dealing with the reality. The reality is that we have a misperception of the world. That's the reality. So we can call the self impermanent if you want to, but the problem is that each one of us is looking at the self or who we are in the wrong way. The way we feel the world is different from the way the world actually is. We experience ourselves to be much more solid than we actually are. That is the problem. So even if you say, oh, the self is impermanent, actually it doesn't do very much to you. What does something to you is the practicing the path and then realizing actually these 5 khandhas, or our person, who we are, is actually empty. It doesn't feel like it is empty. We have a misperception. That is the problem. So you cannot just say, oh, we just redefine it. That's not good enough. You need to re-experience things, understand things in a different way. That is the point. Yeah.
Hi, Ajahn.
Hi.
Okay, so I have a question about not self. I think in the Sutta on not self, it says that form is not self. If form was self, it wouldn't lead to affliction. But you could compel form. May my form be like this? May it not be like that?
Yeah.
But because you can't compel form, therefore it's not self. So, is it right to think about not self in the sense of like out of control?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
because my form, my feeling, my perceptions, my 5 khandhas are out of my control, therefore there's no need to cling so much. So that is the kind of like the real meaning behind non-self.
That is one very important meaning of it. Out of control and reliable. It's not that they're out of control from you, that they are just out of control, full stop. Because if it's out of control from you, then it kind of is still already assumes a self, but actually they're just out of control. End of story. And so, yes, absolutely. So this is one of the criteria the Buddha uses to explain the concept of a self is bound up with being in charge of things, being able to have it this way or that way. And if you can't, if nature is what is in charge, cause and conditions in nature, the laws of physics or the laws of psychology or the laws of karma or whatever, if that is in charge, it means that things just go along according to cause and conditions. So yes, exactly. That's exactly one of the powerful ways of saying it. So yes, thank you for reminding us. Yeah. Good.
Ajahn, if the if the practice of applying Dhamma goes accordingly to flow, like what you mentioned, then how does right effort comes into play?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good question. Another good question. So, right effort is that effort where you allow the Dhamma to do things for you. Yeah. So, for example, let's say that you start to get upset with somebody. There's someone does something bad towards you, and you get a bit upset about that because they do something bad. They say some words or whatever, and then suddenly it kicks into you. Wait a minute. Let me not just speak back straight away. Yeah, how can I look at this situation differently? That is the Dhamma kicking in, right? This impulse to say something bad straight away, that is the sense of self exerting itself. The self doesn't want to be put down or whatever. The sense of self wants to stand up its ground. Yeah, don't talk like that to me. This is about me, me, me. Yeah, it's always the me, the self. And so, but the right effort there is the Dhamma kicking in. The Dhamma saying, whispering, wait a minute, this is not the right way of responding, right? That is right effort, and it comes from the Dhamma. It doesn't come from you. Then you may start to think, then the self may take over a little bit again. The self may say, yeah, okay, yeah, that's the Dhamma now, and maybe I must act differently. So there's no absolute distinction between self and Dhamma here. Because the sense of self is part of who we are. We cannot really get it out completely. But that initial point when you say, wait a minute, this is different, that is the Dhamma whispering into your ear. Yeah, the Dhamma is saying something. And that is the voice you need to follow. So listen to the Dhamma voice, listen to the self voice, and follow where the Dhamma is leading you. And then and that will be right effort. Effort that comes from the self will be mixed. Yeah, there will be some degree of delusion there because of the self, and there will maybe be something Dhamma because you know the Dhamma. So maybe it's a little bit mixed and a little bit kind of, a little bit kind of partially good, partially bad. But the ideal is just the Dhamma coming through you. Yeah.
I think we have to end now.
Okay.
We have another session in the afternoon.
Yeah.
More obscure suttas.
Please come to the obscure suttas. Yeah, they're interesting. Yeah, more obscure, the more interesting. Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe
Let's,
not.
Let's say 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Ajahn, maybe do dedication of merits.
Yes. Okay, so I'm going to teach you.
Blessing.
I'm going to teach you how to do the dedication of merits. Yeah, it goes like this: Idang menyatinang hotu sukit. Idang menyatinang hotu idang. No, it goes like this. Okay, so this is the kind of the mistake that most people make. They say idang me nyati nang. That's wrong. It's like this. Idang me nyati nang hotu. There's a long I there. So I'm just teaching you now before we start, yeah? Because I was told by Ai Ling that apparently some monk came here and said, no, you're all doing it wrong. This is the right way of doing it. And he's actually right, that monk, yeah? We have a tendency to do this wrong. So I say, nyati nang. It's not nya. Nyati nang is nyati nang. That's the correct way. If you don't care what I'm saying, that's okay. Don't have to worry. Okay, so here we go. Idang men yati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang men yati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Idang men yati nang hotu sukita hontu nyatayo. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let's also do the Arahang Sammasambuddha as well. It's always nice to do that towards the end. So I'll just listen.
Do you want to give a short blessing?
A short blessing?
Yeah.
Usually at the end of the day, right?
End of the day. Okay, everyone has to stay back till the end of the day.
That's a really smart move, isn't it? So let's just do the Arahang Sammasambuddha anyway. It's always nice to pay homage to the Triple Gem.
Samma Sambuddho Bhagavata. Abhivademi. Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Bhagavato Sawaka Sangho Sangham Namami. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.